Hello and welcome back. We are the Pilgrims of Plunder. This is our podcast. I am here with Pastor Doug, and I myself am Laity Greg. And today's topic that I want to bring up and discuss is a fairly hot topic, I guess, within Christianity. And it is in the context of the individual Christian and the church in relation to the civil magistrate. But the caveat being when the civil magistrate overtly changes, is supplanted, is replaced. We are of the mindset, amillennially and biblically, that the church submits to the magistrate. Doesn't matter if the magistrate is evil or Christian. You submit to earthly authority because God has appointed all authority, and we submit unto God, which is one context if you are under the current rule of whatever stable government. My question is, what happens when that government is toppled because of foreign invaders? When we got on this topic, just for a quick
going
background,
to exile, you mean?
Yes. Exile works. Toppled, exiled, all of those very real things that can happen. And this came about as because I started watching A Bridge Too Far, and
Best movie ever.
And which I, from one of our previous episodes, I was prompted to watch it, and so I started watching. I have not finished it. It is a good movie thus far, though I haven't finished it. But one of the things was you have the Germans within, I keep wanting to say Holland. What was it? Who was the kid who was acting as a spy? Where was that? Denmark? Whatever.
Well,
and
Holland is not a country, but yeah,
I know it's not a country. That's the problem with me wanting to say
it's Holland. So there's the Netherlands, and then the.
Oh, I know. I get how geography works. Point being, there was a kid who was acting as a spy, and so there's the underground feeding information back to the Allies, and this of course happened throughout all wars. You always have that. Same thing in France. There was the French resistance against the occupying Nazi force, which sort of brought up, it prompted me, like, that's a terrifying vocation. Being a spy is definitely super dangerous. But sort of into the broader question of, if your magistrate is exiled or overthrown, so however it looks, what can you do as a Christian? What is appropriate versus inappropriate?
It is a very interesting example, and to go again with the best movie ever made, A Bridge Too Far, because you're right. Like the Dutch government was in exile. Literally, the cabinet of the Netherlands went into exile, and so that's an interesting thing because, if you're in Nazi Germany and the Germans are in control, the Nazis are in control, you have to submit to that government. Now, a lot of people, especially the post-mill types, when they hear submit, they think we just do whatever they say without any question. That's not what we believe.
Right.
Obviously, if the Nazis come up and say blaspheme Christ, you politely say no, and then you get killed.
Mm-hmm.
But they are the lawful authority. But we hit upon this interesting caveat. Let's say you're in the Netherlands, the Nazis invade, your government flees and goes into government in exile in London, which literally did happen. Which magistrate do you follow?
Right.
And do you fall into what's called the doctrine of the lesser magistrate, where you kind of get the pick? To be blunt, I mean,
yeah.
Do you get to pick? And if they're at war with each other, and one is saying take up, the Nazis are saying take up arms against the Dutch government in exile, and the Dutch government in exile is saying you need to take up arms against the Nazis. Could you engage in violent resistance because you're under another magistrate? In this case, if you were the lesser magistrate, in the sense of, well, the Dutch government's no longer there.
Right.
I think there's freedom in that. I'm not sure if it would impact the church. And we've done 2 other videos on this. And that's why I make the distinction between the individual reacting and the church reacting. I don't think the church changes, because the church is about the gospel, and it's about worship, and it's about Christian discipleship. The
Right.
individual Christian, could you join, what's the Dutch, I mean, the Maquis, go with the French term, the Maquis, which was the French resistance. Could you go
It's
full Maquis because you have someone, not Charles de Gaulle, but whoever was the head of the French government in England at the time? Could you join the Maquis if you were French and be kosher?
weren't the Maquis from Star Trek?
They got it from the French.
I'm like, I know
I
that
actually
word.
know the real reference.
That was in Star Trek.
Yeah, it was in DS9. I said
Yep.
the Bajorans or something. Their underground was called the Maquis, and I'm like, oh hey, cool, you're stealing.
Should have just it should have just been Babylon 5. But anyway, the uh yeah, yes. And so to that, the lesser magistrate. Because I think one of the best historic examples being that of Luther and Luther's situation, which had its differences, I
Yep.
suppose also with similarities in this, because Luther has been I inaccurately credited with a lot of resistance theory that didn't really happen or come from Luther. Luther was very
Frederick the Wise.
pro law,
Yeah.
and pro government. And I don't know if we brought it up in previous episodes, relevant, it's appropriate now. Again, the Luther's main concern about don't go along, don't obey,
Yeah.
was at that point the civil government, the emperor, was effectively a puppet of Rome,
Yep.
of the Roman Church, and was therefore being used as a sword against the Protestants. And Luther's advice to Christians, to Protestants, when the magistrates come to, recruit you or conscript you into the military, don't, because they're going to make you kill Protestants. So if you are a Protestant, don't join. When they tell you to join, they're going to use you as a sword against your brothers. And that was his very narrow, if you will, Protestant resistance theory, which again was primarily concerned with the church. You don't kill Christians, and the state was
But
being abused by religious authority.
I'm trying to remember my Augustine. I'm sorry, my Augustine, my and my Luther. I thought I agree. Luther was not a Christian nationalist in the way we try to do at this day and age.
Right.
But I thought, you could, if you had 2 Protestant princes who go to war, and that's Protestant fighting Protestant, that's still just. In other words, now the prince might do evil, and it may not be just war in that sense.
Right.
But you can, if your occupation is a soldier and your prince goes to war. Yeah, I mean, in the 17th century, you have the movement. At the beginning of the century, most people are fighting by religious reasons.
Right.
At the end, it's now national. And so at first, the English are, say, fighting the Catholics, but then they start fighting the Netherlands, because though Protestant, at least the Dutch part, they are now they are direct competition with the English Empire, the starting English Empire.
Right.
I'm off on a tangent here. So I think you could. I'm not disputing your point. He might give advice.
No, because my point was of that narrow scenario where the Roman Catholic Church was using the state to murder Protestants, and Luther advised not to take part in that. That is very different than 2 Protestant nations that are warring against one another.
But the person that gave Luther cover is Frederick the Wise. And that's, again, the lesser magistrate theory. You have the Holy Roman Empire, which is under control of the Habsburgs, at least at the top of it, and that's Roman Catholic. But the different electors, the noble princes, if you will, of the Holy Roman Empire, of our various different religions. And so when Frederick the Wise gives Luther shade, it allows Luther to engage in this rebellion against Rome, but he's arguing it's not rebellion, it's under the auspices of the magistrate.
Right.
Same thing in England when Henry VIII goes Protestant for bad reasons, but it gave the Protestants the justification
Yeah.
to have a Protestant state church.
Yes.
But we're off topic. So, but it is interesting.
Yeah.
And again, I'm back to my Marquis thing. If you were French and your government is in exile and your government is telling you to actively resist the Nazis, can you do that in clean conscience? That's
right. The patriotic response that you want to just default to is why yes, of course, let's all join the ranks and start blowing them up. Now that may not be the incorrect response or the immoral response, but it should be for the right reasons. And thoughtfully.
Now, is there a problem because it's irregular warfare? Is that irrelevant? If the magistrate says irregular warfare is okay,
and that's that's always kind of one of my considerations, which I was also wanting to get to.
Yeah.
It's no longer, I mean, because again, when you start getting into like guerrilla warfare, it gets weird. And I know, and so let's roll it back a bit. Because when we talk about warfare, you're generally talking about this clean ideal where both sides are clearly marked. They have their own sovereignty and troops, and you're fighting one another, which hasn't happened for a very long time, and also hasn't always happened in most wars throughout human history. Tend not to be super clean. As soon as you start attacking, cities, you sort of throw out that battlefield mentality. So, to sack a city, you've abandoned the battlefield. It is now urban warfare. So I guess even on that, as a citizen, are you ever morally obligated to stop fighting the invader? Just because they have a flag that they've raised on the pole of your government building, does that flag matter? So remove the Christian context first. Like as a citizen, because so the rules of being a POW, after all of the rules of don't tell them anything, the catch-all rule of being a POW is you always try to escape. Right? That you actively try to not be a prisoner. So do what you can to not be a prisoner. They never cease to be the enemy, is sort of the mentality. The enemy has captured you. They don't stop being the enemy. So if you take that out past the individual and say the enemy has captured your city, they may assert authority through force, but they're not your leaders. They're still the enemy. Do you always fight?
Well, I think there's two questions.
Yes.
One, and this is off topic, can you be a conscientious objector? That's the second, I guess, it's on the fringe. Can you just say, no, I don't want to do this?
Yes, you can.
And the other, but the question we're dealing with today is, can you pick your magistrate?
Right. So can you pick a magistrate? Can you pick, so in this scenario, do you pick the resistance or do you pick the Nazis?
Well, I mean, obviously, we gave a very white and black example. You want to go, I mean, you kind of want to go with the resistance because the Nazis are evil.
Right.
I mean,
well, all invaders are evil for there's somebody who shows up and is taking over your home. That's not good.
I mean, if it's more of a gray thing, what do you do? I mean, is there a freedom? Is there, the rebels take over, the colonials take over a section of New England, Boston, get an example. Can you now choose if I'm going to side with the colonies, and the British had Boston. I think the British held on to Boston long, so scratch that. Some western part of Massachusetts gets taken over by the rebels. Can you what? I'm now against good King George III, or can I say no? I'm going to stay with George III and try to sabotage the rebels. That's an interesting thing.
Yeah, you know, and it's uh, yes.
Because in our country, if we continue to split as we're heading, what
Right.
happens if the governor and the president go two different directions?
See, and
Can you
that's an interesting
can,
thing.
can you pick and choose?
So, and let's step back to the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
Or is that politically incorrect? The war for America's independence? I don't know. Whatever we want to
The
call it.
rebellion,
The rebellion,
the
the
unjust
rebellion
rebellion
against the
against
lawful
lawful
crown.
authority of the English crown.
Uh-huh. So
I'm gonna get so hated for these videos if my first
America. So I live in America.
God
Uh,
save our gracious king.
I can scream one of my 7 anthems louder than you. Uh, uh, we're that good. No, no. So actually, and kind of one of the things, somewhat.
Yeah.
I mean, again, as meaningful or not as this may be, sort of a just I guess a general question.
Yeah.
If the scenario is, I suppose, you're a citizen in Western Massachusetts, and the rebels, and I guess you're currently under English rule, and the rebels took over. Are you now saying you are a non-combatant as long as you were under an authority with which you agreed? Now that the rebels have taken over, are you becoming a combatant? Are you now saying, wait, I was fined under British rule as a citizen. I'm not I'm not a uniformed soldier. But now that the people I don't like have taken over, now I'm going to step up and fight, and I'm going to fight for the crown. Because I guess that's the scenario. Because if you were always, a fighting man of one side, then it's sort of an easy question. Well, of course, you've been a soldier for the crown. The rebels took over. You're still going to fight them. They've always been the enemy. Are you now saying, wait a minute, I'm going to fight now, and I'm going to fight for the English? Because I think if you weren't going to fight at all, again, maybe in that conscientious objector sort of thing, or you just want to be a citizen, you want no part, not for any necessarily moral reasons, but it's like, I wasn't fighting for the English. The rebels took over. I'm not going to fight for or against the rebels. Just leave me and my family alone. Can you, like the libertarian approach?
Who was the name?
Leave us alone.
No, it
Mel
happened.
Brooks.
Alistair what was this? Sorry, just jumping all over.
No.
The gentleman in the Civil War, McLean or something was his last name.
John McClane.
No. Maybe related. I don't know.
No,
But he lived near Bull Run, the first battle of the Civil War, if my memory serves correctly. And he fled because he didn't want any part of it. So he fled to Appomattox Courthouse.
Okay.
And it's in his house where Lee surrendered to Grant.
Oh,
so like he was at the beginning of the war, at the end of the war.
But
sorry. But
like, is that
the revolution?
I guess even to sort of bring that into this conversation, the I want no part in this, and not to the point of necessarily being a conscientious objector.
Yeah.
Is that an acceptable? Because a lot of people, and it's not just with war or politics.
Yeah.
Most people who are zealous, in the good sense, about a cause, want everyone else to be equally zealous, and then some enter into that very dangerous realm. You are immoral for not having a zealous opinion like I am. So you have to fight, sort of a thing.
And this is where it's going to take a lot of courage in the local church to remain neutral.
Right. Neutrality is not a sin.
Because it's going to be huge pressure for the church to go one way or the other. And I can't have fellowship with the heathen next to me. I mean, I've actually known some churches I've read about in the 20th century, like you had to be pro-union. Like if the pastor didn't drive an American car or something, you'd get fired from that church.
Yep.
That's crazy.
We may have stumbled on something very important as far as the topic, but I think that's also a very important scenario.
So again,
to remain neutral. Can you be Holland? Switzerland.
So the church has to be, the church, I would argue, has to be radically apolitical.
I agree.
And
Fully.
that's really, really hard to do.
I agree.
Especially if something is black and white as the Nazis.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
you know they're evil.
Yeah.
Right.
But it also can be just as painful as something like the Civil War, the American Revolution, where it's like you're divided down the center.
Yep.
And and when it gets that heated, you're grabbing the guns. It's hard to have calm, rational thought.
It is.
But I think our focus is on the individual Christian. I think there's freedom. I think on some crass level you can choose. I think if you go the conscientious objector route, I think it has to be for correct biblical reasons.
Right.
Because you can use that as a cop-out sometimes, because the state does have authority. But if it, the horrors of civil war, and for Luther, of course, the greatest evil is not totalitarianism, it's anarchy.
Yes.
Anarchy is by far the most scary thing there is.
It is. It is.
So
fully agree.
So I think there's freedom for the individual. I mean, I guess, again, the government in exile tells you to resist the Nazis. Can you go and start assassinating Nazi leaders?
Right.
Because that's not assassination, that's warfare. And your government is telling you to engage in warfare.
Right.
But then again, I'm back to the question. Sorry, I'm all over a lot this today.
No, that's fine.
Then there's the issue of irregular warfare. Is that at all even moral?
So I, being a good American, because it's very appropriate for this, and I know that we touched on it briefly before. So I would definitely like to be of that. I don't really want to get involved to begin with. And to your point, which I do agree, if the magistrate says we're being invaded, every able-bodied man grab your gun and go to war, yes, you submit to that authority, the magisterial authority. It sucks. I will come right out and be like, that is a scenario that I pray I never actually have to be a part of. But if it comes down to it, you grab the gun off the wall and you go and you fight, because the civil authority has said so.
But you can. There is the conscientious objector. We talked about this before,
which I am not, and I wouldn't suddenly
exactly. I just don't want to do it.
Right? No. Yeah. I wouldn't go. I'm gonna conscientious.
You're directly
really
violating
conscientious
one of
objector.
God's,
Yeah. No. So I don't conscientiously object to shooting bad guys.
Yeah.
So
Yankees.
I have no problem with that. However, I, being a good American, and this actually comes up because I went down that road of, can I as a Christian own a firearm?
Yeah.
And, because I as an American certainly can, but can I morally own a device which has the purpose of the destruction of life?
Guns, no. Bows, yes.
What's that?
Guns, no. Bows, yes.
Guns, no. Bows, right.
I was just joking about your background. Yeah, no problem.
No, I know. Look, well, then I got my bases covered. Knives, bows, guns, we're good. So, and the way that I thought about it, genuinely thought it, because honestly, if it is contrary to Scripture to own a firearm, a weapon, then I will put aside my citizenship, the right as a citizen of a earthly kingdom, in favor of the rights or obligations of being a citizen of that heavenly kingdom. If it is a violation of God's law for me as a Christian to own a firearm, it doesn't matter if I have a Second Amendment right to do so. The laws of God are superior to the laws of man. And that even means when it comes to matters of liberty, because we are Christ's bondmen. So, however, the wonderful Romans 13 passage, which the post-mill tend to abuse, it's interesting how it actually plays quite favorably into this. It is the state that has the power of the sword.
Right.
In America, the state has given, by lawful authority, to the individual citizens the right to defend life and innocence. I, as an American citizen, bear the sword by the authority of the state. I cannot arrest someone the way that a law enforcement officer could arrest someone, but I can carry and discharge a firearm under lawful pretenses and in lawful context.
Right.
And that is guarded, protected, afforded by the magistrate. So the concept, if you will, of militia, even down to the individual U.S. citizen, as a Christian, I have the magisterial authority granted to me to carry a firearm. That all being said, and I bring that up because it's going to that point of irregular warfare. When the premise of your civil society is each household has the lawful right to fight, to protect his own land and family, irregular warfare isn't a bad thing, because that's what it comes down to. Everybody who has a gun, grab your gun and you fight the invaders. You're not the military.
Yeah, but is there a difference?
But that may be,
warfare,
it also may be legal.
but like you think of the classic,
wrong.
and it's sometimes overplayed. The example of Lexington Concord, the Americans are hiding in the woods and shooting from the trees, and the British are foolishly just walking down the road, which is, there's actually a lot of myth to that. But that's the classic example. But that's military on military.
There is.
Is there a difference between that and the government in France saying to the Maquis, go and just kill Nazis? And so, the local Nazi magistrate, the local mayor who's been set up by the Nazis, can you take a shot at him?
So I will respond to your question with a question.
My gut is no, but I don't know why.
But what is the prerequisite for military? If a lawful, if the governor, if the magistrate, because you have, so in times of in certain periods, marshals, for example, can deputize.
Yep.
You can lawfully deputize in certain scenarios citizens. Here's a gun. You now have lawful authority. We're fighting. If you do that, if the governor of Texas, who cares about that? If the mayor of Knox County, because he's a wrestler, if he says, grab your guns, I authorize that you are all who are willing are operating as lawfully assigned militia. You are now, by decree of the government, you can now fight under the banner of this, and therefore go kill things.
Well, no,
does that work? Does that count?
But the militia, but the rules of,
I know there are rules.
Warfare.
Yep.
You go kill soldiers.
Right. Can you start assassinating civilians who hold office with the enemy?
My gut is no. So
I would also say no, because civilians are not enemy combatants.
So back to my Maquis thing. So the French government in exile says all able-bodied men go out and continue the fight.
Yep.
The resistance. Yep. So you start shooting at a Wehrmacht armor column. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. I guess that's okay.
Yes, it is. Those are valid military targets.
Shooting the collaborator mayor of the city,
war crime.
Yep, I think so.
And that gets into just warfare theory. Yep. Civilians, and I hold the problematic purist opinion.
Yeah,
civilians are not enemy combatants
unless you use a heavy bomber.
Then they're collateral damage,
and we've had long conversations about that,
which is a totally different topic, which is something that
I don't want to go off.
No, because our ultimate conclusion for that was all warfare is moral compromise.
Horrible. Yeah, it's just
you cannot have perfect warfare.
So, but now So I guess that's okay, but
Don't
can you?
assassinate civilians.
But can you? But is with the doctrine of lesser magistrate? We'll go with it. Again,
Okay.
the French government in exile says we want you and France to rise up and go fight the Nazi army, the Wehrmacht,
Yep.
the,
Yep.
the military. I guess we're saying yes, you can do that as long as you engage in just war theory.
Correct.
Do you have two other options? No, I'm going to go with the current magistrate and put on the black uniform.
See, now that's the
Or,
interesting.
or can you just say, I don't know? We're in a type of chaos.
Right.
I'm just going to ignore both of you.
So, all right, yes, fantastic. Because again, and I think it's helpful for me to personalize everything because it's easier to take it from being purely fictional. Yeah. And so I have a gun, and the mayor said, "Grab your gun. Let's go get him, men."
Yeah.
So can I say I don't know what to do? I think that if you are genuinely convicted, yes. That is, I will say that is excusable. I'd also like to take a quick point to that, and using on the eve, if you will, of the invasion of Israel into the land of Canaan, forming together the Jewish military. It started with everyone who was 20 years and older. You bring in; those are qualified by age. But then you go down and you say, if you're just married, if you just planted a vineyard, you don't, you haven't been with your wife, you haven't had a crop, go, you have the freedom to go. There's that last one also, which is if you do not have essentially the heart or the stomach for war, go. And because you're going to be a hindrance for the guy next to you. And so those men who were not fighting men were permitted leave. And there was no criticism, there was no condemnation, there was no judgment. And then from the remaining, they elected their officers, so on and so forth, because these were fighting men. I think that if you are not a fighting man, if you are not a man of war, there's nothing wrong with that. If you honestly fall into that group of, I don't want to fight. I don't know what to do. Or is that conscientious?
Because that's a generic thing. The United States calls for a draft, and is that part of the conscientious objector? It's like, look, just I'm a lover, not a fighter. I don't want to go.
I think that's fine. Well, conscientious. Am I being too narrow with conscientious objector? If you're against all war for the sake of war, I think that's very different than not being someone who's capable of fighting. You don't have to object to war. Yeah, but you can support war.
But who decides whether you're capable of fighting or not? You or
in my example that I gave, it was the individual.
Right, and you're going with the Old Testament law. But
what? That's my only example that I have. All right, we don't have a New Testament application for this.
Well, obey the magistrate. They have the power of the sword.
Sure, but again, should the magistrate? I'll kind of push back. If the magistrate is lawful, should they not also be merciful? Shouldn't there be mercy shown to your own citizens?
Sure, but that's describing a good magistrate, bad magistrate. We're called to submit to the magistrate.
Oh, we are. Sure. No. I know that. But if a bad magistrate orders everybody to go to war, whether or not you like it, I mean, yeah, sure. I'm not trying to justify draft dodging. Is my point.
Yeah.
I'm really not. However, and I get that. That's. I will say. I think that drafts are unbiblical. I'm going to go right out there and I'm going to say that because, again, you are now forcing everyone, even those who are not men of war, to wage war. And I have a problem with that. I think that there is a place for mercy as demonstrated by God's command that we are ignoring under, and I will make the argument saying practical reasons. If we give people the out, we won't have a fighting force. I think that's false. I believe that there are enough men of war who are willing to step up for a legitimate cause.
All right.
And so you should be that. But anyway,
we've tangented on a tangent.
I know. I'm saying like this may be a totally different thing. Anyway, reining it back in.
So let me
reining it back in.
Because you're now talking about what's just policy for a government.
I know.
And then we got, is it okay to object? Can you be conscientious objectors. And then the
Yeah,
original point was,
I
can
know.
you pick your magistrate?
Can you pick your magistrate? I know we're going back into the pick your
All right, so
magistrate.
let's stay with France. Let's
Yeah,
stay with France.
stay. Well, hold on. So, can you pick your magistrate? So
Yeah,
we're ignoring that. We're ignoring the people who are confused. All right. So we'll ignore whether or not that's a moral option. Can you be confused? Who knows? We
I
won't.
think
We don't
that's a
know if
really
you're
important
allowed to be
thing, but
confused. Okay. So sorry, everybody who's confused. You don't. We're gonna just you're gonna fade away. So we're gonna. There are only two camps. One, ally with the current / exiled government, or two, submit to the authority of the occupying government. And they say, stop killing us. They also say, if you have a gun, you are now under our rule and authority. Fight against the rebels who are resisting.
turn them over to
Right.
lawful authority.
Turn them over to the new lawful authority. Right. We have a flag at your Capitol building, which means we're in charge now.
So
We,
there has to be in this scenario 3 options. I'm sorry, there has to be a third option.
I know there's a third option. You didn't want me talking about the third option.
Yeah, because I want to talk about the third option because it's because there's the land is in chaos.
Yes.
There is confusion.
Yes.
And obviously in time the Lord's going to sort this thing out.
Right.
But at that initial point of chaos, you say, look, you know what, I'm not taking either side. I'm not gonna get a gun. I'm not gonna rat out on either side. I'm gonna keep my head down. I'm gonna go to church. I'm gonna the best I can and live my life.
Right.
Now, whoever wins might call you a coward.
Yeah, well, whatever.
But so be it. I think the first question is, do you have freedom to choose? And I think in that case, the answer is yes. I think in that choice allows you to either engage in lawful military activity as being ordered from the magistrate you have chosen against the invading evil force.
Yep.
I think you also do have the third option, and I think that's where I would go down. It's like, I want to see where this shakes out. Because we're in a time, and unfortunately, by the Lord's justice, we're in a time of chaos, and that's terrifying. We're not sure who our magistrate is.
And East Tennessee, interestingly, anecdotally on history, was one of those scenarios because middle and central and western Tennessee were Confederate.
Yeah.
East Tennessee was on the fence. There were issues. You had Union and Confederate sympathies within East Tennessee, which does sort of make it interesting. So I mean, like
the Kingdom of Jones. Yeah, there was a section of the South, I don't remember what it was, which stayed Union. It's a rural part of the South. They said, like, nope. Yeah. But so I mean, man, we are all over a lot on this one.
I don't know, but what does that option look like? So you're and now I'm all for the I'm gonna try living my life the best that I can without any affiliation, and I don't disagree with that as a valid option. I am in full support of that option. I think that's a good option. I don't look at that as cowardice. I guess my kind of pushback is, and again, it comes down to that matter of conviction. You're picking the third option where 2 magistrates are now ordering you to do something that it conflicts, obviously. Invading magistrate says fight the natives, native magistrate says fight the invaders. So is the third option lawful in that you are ignoring both magistrates?
Yeah.
And you're obeying, I guess I'd have to then question, what civil authority now are you under?
Well, you're obeying, then in that case, you're actually obeying in normal sense the folks that are there. In this case would be the Nazis, go with my example, because you're going to show up, you're going to pay your taxes. The police officer who's now under the Nazi government comes and gives you orders, you do those orders. Right. So you are kind of defaulting to a conservative position, I grant you, because you are not trying to undermine that group. But so you are kind of it's
Oh
the
yeah,
conservative
yeah.
position.
You've
I
just accepted the role of a citizen of the Third Reich.
Yeah, because in
Yep.
God's judgment, this is not what we got. So
Yeah.
I am now. I'm not
Man in the high
actively,
castle.
but I'm not actively taking up arms or, if you will, snitching on the government in exile. If I know my neighbor's a marquis, I'm, don't ask, don't tell.
Right.
I guess.
Now, now is
Again,
that moral? Is that lawful and moral?
I pray for God's mercy because we're in
Right.
this crazy place of chaos, and I'm like, I
Right.
don't know what to do.
I think, and I do, I err on the side that that is
Yeah.
okay. I mean, because again, like if you know your neighbor is harboring, fleeing Jews,
Yep. I would say
then
anything.
just keep your mouth shut. I
Yep.
mean, like honestly, you just because it's not immoral to be a Jew. I don't think that it's lawful to turn them over unto death.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And,
So
and that you have some shade for,
yeah.
because you have a government in exile that used to be your government.
Right. Right.
And no, it's a horrible situation.
I guess there is only two. I guess no. So then there are only
I guess so.
so there are only
Yeah,
two.
but that is,
But no no no.
but I'm not
There
going
are
full Nazi. I'm not putting on the bench
never go
cross here.
full Nazi.
Yeah.
No, no. You're not. No no. But your point, and I think that that's an important distinction for the discussion. We were approaching it purely from military action.
Yeah.
Take a step back. Allegiance. What is allegiance too strong of a word? That implies agreement. You know what?
Loyalty.
No,
I
no,
don't know.
allegiance. Right? You pledge
Yep.
allegiance. That doesn't mean you agree with, but that means you submit to.
Yeah.
So if you submit to, and this is where it kind of gets weird, because if you're going to say, look, I'm going to submit to the new civil order, but I'm not going to violate God's moral law.
Yeah.
Right now, there's nothing new with that.
Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah.
Now, do you say
Exactly.
I'm going? But so then here's the thing. Can you then submit to the previous organization without taking military action? Because their whole purpose now
Yeah.
is military resistance.
Yep.
Unless
I
because if you're not going to pay your taxes, because your allegiance is to the exiled magistrate, therefore I'm not going to support in any way the new civil authority.
Yeah.
But that is a non-military action, right? Not supporting is
well, I mean,
fine.
they're
You don't have to
cranking
shoot
out.
them.
I mean, do you stop paying your taxes? If you're working at the local factory that's now cranking out Panther
Right.
tanks, do you intentionally sabotage the Panther tanks while still working?
Well, careful with that one. I mean,
Yeah.
I think in keeping with the don't take military action is also actions of sabotage, actions of assault.
That's hard.
Do you quit your job? Be like, look, I'm not going to support these people.
Exactly.
I'm not going to actively try to destroy or undermine.
But if they
I'm not
force you to
part.
go to your job, is it? I mean, it gets so ugly. It's like, no,
Does.
you have to go to your job because, or else we're going to shoot you.
Right.
Fine, you go to your job. Do you
Right.
do your job the best as you can, which is generally what the scriptures say,
Yep.
or can you try to mess with the Panther tanks because they break down when they go fight the Cromwells and the Shermans?
I like that qualification. I want to pause you right there because that is a fantastic context for that scripture. We work unto the Lord, not
Yeah.
unto our earthly masters.
Yeah.
And we are to therefore labor faithfully unto the Lord, not for the pleasing, not for, eye pleasing of our masters, but
Yep.
unto the Lord. And that is very much, as it goes in with that, we are to submit to both the reasonable and the brutal
Yep.
masters and employers and whatnot. So yes, when the Nazis show up and they convert your factory into manufacturing of arms for the Nazi war effort, shouldn't you still put forth that same level of work ethic?
Yep.
Which even if you remove all of that, just like footnote, remove all that from the military context, because really it's easy to justify our laziness. I don't agree with my employer's worldview, so I'm not going to do a good job. I'm like, well, anyone should be advised, be like, well, that's not appropriate.
But
do your job.
If your government in exile is telling you to fight the fight, and that's how you
Right.
fight the fight.
Now,
Can you?
but at that point, again, that gets into the other one of fine. If you want
Yeah.
to take action
Yep.
against, if you want to sabotage from the inside out, I'm okay with that. I guess there are different, everyone can play a different role in the same war effort. That sounds like
Blow up a bridge,
propaganda commercial.
Yeah, right.
But yes, everyone can take a different role in the resistance, and that would be lawful.
Yep.
But my point is, if you are of that group, I don't want to, and they make you go to work,
Yep.
Then yes, you should still put forth your best, because you're working unto the Lord, even if you're supporting the Nazi war effort. Boy, that sucks.
It gets hard though, because it's
is that right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Because
Horrible.
they force you to, they force you to, become a guard or go fix electricity at Buchenwald or Dachau,
Right.
in one of the concentration camps. You're like,
Right.
no, that's a direct violation of one of the 10 Commandments. I ain't doing that.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's horrible. It's you're left with some really horrible situations, and
how do you be so I actually think that it's a far more interesting discussion. So the easy discussion is, can you as a Christian support the government in exile? Yes, really easy. The better question, how do you remain a faithful Christian to the new magistrate? It's like, look, if you don't want to support the exiled and let's say the exiled government is like legit, like gone, overruled, it doesn't have any real form.
Well, you see, not real, you mean in other words, like they're in London right now,
right? Like there's
they
nothing,
were govening us a few months ago.
Yeah, there's zero semblance of any government other than.
We see. All right, hold on.
No, I mean, like, no, not even exiled. Can we take it to they've all just been executed?
Oh, okay.
So your government's been obliterated. You are now Nazis won. This is now the Third Reich. You're a Christian.
Yeah.
What do you do? Like how do you?
Well, no, that's true with any government. Like, currently,
exactly.
I live in a blue state where we are heading towards a more
You submit
place.
to the commies.
You submit to the godless communists that rule Connecticut.
Yep.
But if there's a direct violation,
you don't.
Of one of the commandments, you say no and you take the consequences.
Yep. Right. And I guess
that that's easier
here as well.
But see, again, if you have them in exile,
you still have a choice.
That's where it gets tricky. It works better for your case. You get some godless, heretical president who is just running roughshod over the Constitution, and the governor of Tennessee says, we're not doing that.
Right.
I mean, then do you stop paying your federal taxes?
Yeah.
Well, yay, but do you do that? But do you do that under the guise of the governor of Tennessee telling you not to? You're going with a lesser magistrate.
Yes. And I have no problem with that. Do I have a problem with that? Let me think about that for 2 seconds. Hold on. If it came down to it, and the governor said Tennessee is seceding from the federal government,
trying it again. We did it once before.
Trying it again, and then Texas joins in and says, "We're with you." And then a lot of the other southern states say, "This sounds like a great idea."
Look, I want to sing the Bonnie Blue Flag right now.
Then I put up my Confederate flag and take down the American flag. So I have to go buy a Confederate flag first, which I'm sure they're going to be easy to find. Or would I just fly the Tennessee flag? I guess we'll take the less offensive approach.
Right.
I'll get my Gadsden flag. Don't tread on me. And so, do I go along with that? That's weird. That's a weird thing just to kind of think of. Just only just because that's such a foreign concept when you really get down to it.
I mean, because you get to choose.
Not without cost. That is
exactly
not without cost or consequence.
It's happened before. I mean, in the church realm, there was that wonderful time in the late Middle Ages when there was 3 popes and they excommunicated each other. Right. And so the faithful Christian or at least the Christian, had been excommunicated by at least two popes, and you got to pick one.
Yep.
What do you do? I mean, I mean, and again, again, Luther's absolutely right.
Yep.
Anarchy is horrible.
It is. It really is.
So
I
I
guess.
think
Yeah.
I think you get to choose. Now, again, if you
I.
can, like some people have done, you can flee to a more sane state, which is
Yep.
happening in the United States.
Yep.
Red states are getting redder, blue states are getting bluer because people are moving based on ideology.
Yeah.
But I if it goes really wrong and there's two different magistrates, I think you get to choose.
And when it comes down to it, in the federal versus state, I'm far more pro state independence than I am federal. It's not too much of a, it's it's not without sobriety that I would
Right.
make that decision. However, I think even on lines of ideology, I favor state sovereignty over federal sovereignty.
But see, here's the problem, and this is my problem with a lot of Christian nationalists, and they don't realize it. They default to the notion in the end, the individual gets to make all the decisions.
Right.
The
Well,
individual, and you're not saying this,
no.
but the
Oh, okay. I'm like,
individual,
but the
the
scenario
individual
is that the
gets to
governor made the
interpret the
decision.
Constitution how they see fit. Who cares what the legislative, the executive, or the judicial branch get to say?
Right.
And of course, it's not how our system works.
No, I disagree with the
Yeah.
strict libertarian, I am my own king approach, which is just insane. No, I am as much as I joke about the whole Gadsden thing. But again, because that was not libertarianism, that was anti-crown. The Gadsden flag was a declaration of resistance against the British, not against lawful
authority, sir. Lawful authority.
Now we could debate whether or not the crown was lawful authority. I don't,
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, there is no debate. Rebel. So, but yes, no. I'm with you. I do not believe that the individual has that authority. You don't choose.
But when it gets chaos, when it truly is, you're like, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, because both have lawful claims,
right,
and they're at war with each other, and what do you do?
If the governor said we're gonna resist,
because
I have no moral issue with going with the governor of Tennessee.
Yeah.
Right. I don't. I mean, because again, take it out of the realm of military. States are doing this all the time.
Yeah.
There are states that are overtly saying we are not going to enforce that federal law. Montana did that with one of the gun. I think it was the gun brace, pistol brace, which also isn't federal law. It was something somehow magically dictated by the ATF.
Yep.
I don't know when the ATF started becoming the government, but anyway,
that's a long conversation.
Pistol brace. No. But you had, I think it was Montana, Colorado. It was some Midwest state.
Yeah.
You had counties where the sheriff's like, we're not going to enforce that. Like, first of all, we don't have those kind of resources. Secondly, it's stupid. So you already have a ton of places. I mean, you have people within red states who are actively facilitating the distribution of abortion pills. They are overtly choosing the federal magistrate over the state magistrate because they disagree with the state.
Yep.
So it's, I mean, it already happens.
Sanctuary cities with the blue states when the magistrate was red. I mean, the federal government was. I don't know, and
it's like it's nothing new.
Our country is coming apart.
Yes, it is.
And again, that's why people like yourselves have fled to other states.
Yep.
Which I get.
We did it for our kids. All guns aside, the guns are just a bonus.
No, but that's still the same thing.
But no, it was. We fled for
thing.
because of political and religious and issues.
Which is a new thing in the United States. I mean, my beloved mother, when she was still here, and though had dementia, she would still ask me about you because it was incomprehensible that anyone would move from Connecticut to Tennessee. Now, granted, she was back in the 1950s and 60s mentally, but she didn't understand the political situation and the notion that we now move based on politics.
Right.
That's new. And it does not speak well for our country. It really is coming undone.
And it does sorry, go ahead.
No, and that's why I think so many I mean, there's so many Christian nationalists out there just praying for the lesser magistrate.
Right.
They're dying for a governor, a mayor, a dog catcher, or something
Right.
that will lead the revolution and
Right.
give them cover.
Which is sad because that's first century Israel right there. We're looking for the Messiah to liberate us from civil oppression.
Yeah,
And I'm like, but we have a king, and it's
and led
Christ.
to massive war and massive, yeah.
Right, right.
Absolutely.
But the fleeing the state thing, is an exercising of
Sure,
the freedom to
sure,
pick your own magistrate.
sure.
Because it's like, if I can choose to live under different rule,
Yeah,
I will live under different rule.
yeah,
Now, granted, in all of our scenarios, it's that, which still doesn't exclude that, like if it came down to, the governor of Tennessee saying, we're going to, resist the federal government, it's also of no problem for anyone to say, I'm going to move out of Tennessee now because I
right.
disagree with you. So I have no problem with, in the
Well,
face of oppression, you
yeah.
flee to a different city. The church did that all throughout the book of Acts.
And
There's
you saw
nothing
that
wrong with that.
yeah, and you saw the United States. Roughly, I've heard it said that in the American Revolution, a third were pro-rebel, a third were pro-crown, and a third just didn't really care.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of people fled the colonies when the colonialist won, because they went back to England, they went back to Canada, they went back to their parts of the empire because it's just like, we don't want a part of this.
Right. Right. And
Um,
I'm fine with that, because again,
yeah,
it, as long as it's not violating, civil law, like it wasn't illegal
yeah.
to move out of Connecticut. I'm sure that if they could make it that way, they would. New York and California are trying. So, I mean, they're still going to tax you somehow.
But can you? But back to the hard
But,
question:
but
is
yes,
the resistance?
the
You know,
resistance.
I mean, I don't want to get this video banned from YouTube.
Viva la resistance.
Yeah, right, right. If the governor of Tennessee goes full resistance,
Right.
can you take up arms against federal institutions in Tennessee?
Right. And again, I think it goes under
That's,
that notion.
yeah,
There are rules to war. It's not suddenly start dragging out all the Democrats into the street and shooting them. Right. That's murder. That's straight up lawless murder.
can you Can you
Can
fire in
you,
Fort Sumter?
what's that?
Can you fire in Fort Sumter?
Was Fort Sumter full of civilians?
Nope, it was full
Oh,
of Yankees.
it's full.
But
Aren't Yankees? They're not civilians
the
then.
Yankees. I don't know, but that was the first. No, because that was the huge debate. Because when the South maybe lawfully left, they voted by the magistrates and they
Yep.
left the Union.
Yep.
And
Totally
you
legal.
had this Yankee fort that is now in violation of Southern territory,
Yep.
and therefore the Yankee invaders. And so therefore they demanded the surrender and said, like, no, you guys are a bunch of rebels. This is federal territory. And for the Southerners, they viewed it as, no, you're in our state.
Yep. This is
And
sovereign
so therefore they
territory.
opened up, and thus the Civil War.
Yeah, I get, again, in the purest of sense, don't kill non-enemy combatants.
No, they had blue.
But
The folks at Charleston
they're
Harbor, they were military,
if they're military, well, so then in that sense, I mean,
but they're
yes,
federal military.
it does. Well, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, yeah. Well, military by any other name.
Right.
You are now within the borders of a sovereign land. You are the declared enemy combatants in there.
Yep.
You withdraw, and when you say no, then that's fair game. I think you can blow up a fort full of enemy combatants.
Yeah, so they went with ignoring the slavery issue and whether that was lawful or not. And
Sure.
there is the debate whether they could lawfully, leave the Union.
Sure,
But
you can.
if
You voted
have,
yourself in, you can vote yourself out. They're Arminians.
yeah, absolutely. And that's a whole nother debate. But
Perseverance.
that is the
No.
classic example of the lesser magistrate.
Yep.
You had on some level, the lawful magistrates of the state of South Carolina
Yep.
left the Union.
Yep.
There's an occupying force in your territory.
Yep.
That's an issue of war. You surrender the fort or else. They refused, and so they open up on it.
Yep. No, which is a very interesting scenario, and of course it's the historic scenario, but I do favor, like I said, I favor state over federal. And I do believe very strongly that the federal government is a federated government. It is made up of state representatives. And so the states can remove themselves from that federation.
There's a debate
Because they
about that.
chose to join it, you can choose to leave it. Now,
I've
there are
heard
consequences.
I've heard there's arguments in the Constitution
That you can't. Once you're in, you're always in.
Once you're in, because you give. I mean, I grant you the 9th and 10th Amendment have been run roughshod over. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
But there is verbiage in the Constitution that the federal government now decides what's rebellion and what not. And so therefore, you've kind of given up you've seceded some of your authority to the federal government. And to leave the federal government is to rebel. It is actually unlawful.
I feel that is a federalist interpretation.
Yes,
because
yes,
the Bill of Rights was introduced by the anti-federalists, which means
a tack on.
Right. Well, it was a concession because they didn't want to end up in a scenario where the states ceased to exist, where they became territories instead of states. Right. So I would say that the historic understanding of the Bill of Rights was from an anti-federalist position because those are the people who proposed it, which means you could, if you interpret the Bill of Rights, any of those amendments, as pro-federal, you're interpreting it wrong, because those were overtly anti-federal. Those were to guard against the federal government assimilating independent states, just making them, because this isn't Canada. We don't have territories, we have states. And I think the Bill of Rights is testament to that mentality.
Well, there is, and we're getting to the end here, there is language against the Constitution that gives the federal government right to deal with, to engage against insurrection and rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, if you join that, not this confederation, but this federation, which is a much stronger document,
right,
and you give up that power to the federal government to deal with insurrection and rebellion, is it therefore lawful for you to leave because that is insurrection and rebellion?
Is leaving?
That's the argument. I'm not dogmatic about that.
No.
I need to think that out.
And I'm fine with that. But my question is this though. I agree that insurrection and rebellion are bad.
Yeah.
Is leaving an organization rebellious?
Isn't
that actually the law, the better choice? If you remain in an organization,
it depends on the rules of the organization.
Right. So I think that a state can be rebellious, and that's bad.
Yeah.
But that's saying we want to remain a part of this federal government, but we're not going to listen to X, Y, and Z. Is different than saying we're out now. We're going to unsubscribe. We want no part in this. We're leaving. We're not rebelling against your authority in that we're not going to, we're not rebelling against your authority. We're just denying that you have any authority anymore, which I know sounds just like the definition of rebellion.
It depends on the document. It depends. Right. I mean, when you join the military, I mean, there are times you can leave depending on the situation. You can resign your commission if you're an officer. Yeah. But usually you just can't leave and get.
No, you don't get to leave.
Yeah, and that's it was never resolved. Well, actually, in one sense, it was resolved because the Civil War resolved it. Because Jeff Davis really, really wanted his day in court for treason.
Right.
Because he was going to make that argument, if you can join, you can leave.
Right.
And the Confederates left legally from their perspective. They had votes. They did it by, people's elective legislator, and there's the 9th and 10th Amendment, yada, yada, yada.
Yep.
And they never had that debate.
Right.
And they let them go. They said, we're not going to charge you for treason because we don't want to wrestle with this. We've killed 600,000 people over this. Just go away.
Yeah.
And so
also because they didn't want to lose that legal battle.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, you don't win a civil war killing 600,000 people and then get it overturned in the court system.
Right. And then it's like, oh, good. So great.
That's just not going to happen. Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, just in a pragmatic, I'm not saying it's moral, but in the pragmatic sort of way.
Yep.
And so it was resolved in, by de facto, not de jure.
Right.
By the matter of fact.
Victors just let that one quietly fade out, and then we carried on. And you
and I
went
don't
from
know.
these United
I,
States to the United States.
I mean, part of me likes the idea that you can leave. I would have. There are arguments from the Constitution that you can't. I know. I think one of the Adams argued that once you're in, because then it's just rebellion.
Right.
It's a hard one because I mean, like going all over the place. It was actually quite impressive that the United Kingdom allowed Scotland to vote to leave.
Right.
That was an impressive thing to do because that self-determination is so rooted in the Western experience.
Yeah.
So but I think we're
I
over.
know, but that's we're like
But
2 minutes.
so
Uh,
I mean, original question. I think
right.
there's freedom.
The ending topic was not necessarily related to the
Yeah,
original, but that's
this
fine.
was
I don't care.
most all over the lot. So
It's okay.
I think you know in the doctrine of the lesser magistrate, if you're in a time of chaos, I think you have some choices to make.
Yes.
You could side with the government in exile, and because there's
Yes.
active war going on, and they're trying to come back, and you're in a type of chaos. I think you have three options,
Yep.
but you always have to be a Christian, and that can get
Right.
hard now. But I think, and who you have loyalty to, there's some freedom.
Right. No,
And
and that is a very interesting other topic. Like,
yeah,
again, if you and your Christian liberty side with the occupying and someone in their Christian liberty sides with the exiled,
yep,
and you're in the same congregation on Sunday,
yeah,
your the
yep,
blood of Christ is superior to
yep.
your
The
current
church.
political affiliation.
I'm talking the individual,
Yep. No, absolutely.
and to continue with this individual for a moment, I think the more, and I hate going pragmatic, the more where the situation's in flux, the more freedom you have.
Right.
I mean, like, let's say for some reason you think England should still be, Charles III should be the official head of state of the United States government. You're kind of a couple hundred years out of date,
I
move
was gonna
on.
say, can you make that argument this day
Yeah,
and age?
but see, I think, and again, that's with warfare and with politics and the things of this earthly kingdom.
Right.
There's a real pragmatism, unfortunately.
Right. Right.
And so if it's a real thing, like your government's in exile, supported by the English government, and they're planning to come back within a few years, and they're actively fighting the Nazis, that gives you, I think, much more freedom.
Right. Can you claim fealty to the crown currently in America and actually do that in good conscience? Or
No, I don't
just
think you have
straight
dual
up an
citizen.
evil person at that point?
I don't think you can do. You can't have dual citizenship in that
No, no,
area.
no. Although I mean, I guess you can't be an enemy combatant against America in the name of England because England and America aren't at war anymore.
Yeah.
So I guess that's that thing. You don't get to say these colonies belong to the crown and start
Yeah.
trying to like take over Connecticut. Because I'm pretty sure
And
that England would
in the
show up
name
and
of
go,
in the
no.
name of good King Charles III, I'm
Right.
going to lead a lawful
Right.
attempt to return Connecticut back to that flag. Yeah, no, it's not how that works.
No, I guess you missed that boat.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
no,
God
that's
in his,
true.
because in the end, it's it's resting in God's sovereignty.
Right.
And I think, again, if it's really chaotic, there is a punt position.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's my
Yeah.
two thoughts.
No,
This is yours. So if you want to,
I want to just end on something which is quite entertaining.
yeah,
This also, interestingly enough, touches if you just accepted the current conflict in Eastern Europe as legitimate. This really does get at the the Ukrainian Russia issue, because you're now saying, hey, there are people within territories within a sovereign nation desiring to
exactly.
belong to another nation, and it's like, well, what do you do?
Yeah,
What do you do now? Which is
that's
which
ugly.
is it is. It really, really is.
Because there's people in the Crimea,
Yep.
which are pro-Russian.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely
yeah,
they are.
it's a mix, and there's some
Yep.
people, no doubt, in Ukraine who are
Right.
pro-Russian. There's some people that are in the Crimea,
Yep. Sure.
that are
Nailed it.
pro-Ukrainian, and
Yep.
it's praise God when He gives us peace.
Oh, absolutely. And as as the Apostle Paul writes,
Yeah.
that we are to pray for our magistrates that we may have peace in
Yeah.
this life.
Amen.
And really, the church should desire to live in peace
Yep.
while on earth. That is a good thing to desire. It is a good thing to pray for. You have freedom as individual Christians. I agree to to have allegiance to whatever magistrate, but our true king is Christ, in whom is peace, and we shouldn't hope for an earthly king to deliver us even in times of chaos, or to establish peace. It is in Christ where that peace is established.
Amen.
And so, yeah, yes, that ought to be it. Um, but yeah, it's a fallen world, and there are a lot of really, really messy situations, really messy situations. It definitely does suck. But anyway, um, yes, as an individual, you have freedom, but still, the church just bow out. uh,
Preach the
maintain,
gospel. Preach the
right,
gospel.
right, proclaim the gospel, wage the spiritual war,
Yep.
not a physical war.
Yep.
Not a political war, not a civil war. It is spiritual.
Yep.
So, but absolutely. Thank you yet again. It was a good conversation, and thanks for everyone who watched and stuck with it all the way to the end. And we'll see everybody next time.
Thanks.
All right.